What's up, my nerds? Welcome to the NextGen Nerd Podcast. I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. We're talking about Dune today with the mother of the nerd, my mom, Terrie Barr, one of our favorite books, and I hope you are ready to talk about it. Would love to hear your comments. Don't forget to share those on the YouTube or on Instagram, and I will share them on the show. But before we jump into the episode, we're doing a new little segment here called Crossover Cast. We're going to cross over two genres and come up with a cast for a show. So we're going to do a sitcom star crew. So I'm thinking Star Trek, The Next Generation, or any of the Star Treks, and I'm thinking the crew, but instead we're going to fill them with sitcom characters. And so I've got my list ready. I'm going to go ahead and pitch it to you, and I want to hear your thoughts on it as well. You may disagree with some of these, and that's okay. This is my sitcom star crew. You may have a different one. So I'm going to start off right at the top with my captain. I really struggle with this because I was down to two, Michael Scott and who I actually went with. And if you're a huge Office fan like I am, you probably think I've already betrayed you. But really, I felt like the show would be better served with Ron Swanson behind that captain or sitting in that captain's chair. I think he would make a fantastic captain just to go ahead and knock some of the nonsense down. But don't worry, my second command, of course, is going to be Dwight Schrute. Dwight Schrute will definitely be the best yes man to Ron Swanson, do everything he needs him to do, go along with all his shenanigans, support all his, conspiracy theories. I think it would be a good pairing to have those two. Then this next one, when I was typing the position down, immediately I knew who I wanted for my engineer. So this is the guy who fixes stuff on the ship. And as I was thinking through my favorite sitcoms, there is one Mr. Fix-It above the rest. The guy who angry fixes, the guy who doesn't want fancy fixes, okay? He wants just normal fixes, and that's Nick Miller from The New Girl. Nick Miller as my engineer, I think would be just hilarious watching him constantly have stuff explode as he's trying to fix it using the most ramshackle garbage solutions possible. I think it'd be a fun character to watch. For communications, again, this was a little tough. Communications, I ended up going with Job Bluth from Arrested Development. And I think even just his voice in that communication would be good. But I think, too, it'd be fun to watch him misinterpret, what the message was that was coming over. Was this a flirtatious message when it really wasn't? I think Joe would be a fun one to have on the deck, just, again, mixing it up and causing just problems. For my helmsman or helmswoman, going back to the office, I thought, who would I want behind the wheel? Meredith Palmer. Meredith Palmer will get us in and out. Sure, the ship's going to be scraped to destroyed, quarter panels ripped off, but we're going to make it, and we're going to make it there fast. And so Meredith Palmer sitting in that seat. Tactical, I struggled with this one too, trying to figure who would be a good fit, and I landed on Tom Haverford, because I could see him, wanting all the latest gadgets, the latest tech, the latest weapons, but none of them really working. Or even maybe selling off the weapons for an ice cream machine, or selling off the weapons for a new DJ Roomba. So I think it'd be a fun one to watch. And finally, for medical, I went with another lady. Again, the lady who can cure all that ails, Beverly Goldberg, the mom from the Goldbergs. And again, it would be your Yiddish cures, your homemade brews. I think she would be a fun one to watch. Just dote on everybody as they're not feeling well, and be that smother mother on the ship. So that's my crew. I hope you have some thoughts as well. I would love to hear what your crew would be, or the things you like or disagreed with that. Share that in the comments on YouTube or on Instagram under the post for the show, and I would love to read those on the show next week. But I think that does it for our intro segment. We're going to kick it over to our interview. Let's get nerdy. What's up, my nerds? Welcome back. Like I mentioned at the top of the show, I have my mom on the show. I've been wanting to have her on for a while. She's one of my favorite people to talk to, so it makes sense to have her on the show. And it's not hard either to pick a topic. because most of my favorite books were books that she gave me, usually under protest by me, like, this is a dumb book. And I could list several. I mean, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, it was one. Dune, which we're talking about today. There was even a Christian devotional, Christian Wisdom of the Jedi Masters, and I got it and I thought, George Lucas is not a Christian. This is not a Christian movie. Like, what is this filth that she has given me? And I love that devotional. I've read through it a couple times. We did it as a Bible study with our youth. And so we're going to be talking about Dune today. And before we jump into that, glad to have you on. Welcome. This is Terrie, my mom. You can know her as Terrie. And so what are some other nerdy interest things that you like or have liked over the years?
Well, I would say my most recent nerdy interest would be the 5D diamond painting.
Yes, she does. So I don't have any here, I don't think. But usually, have you ever seen those? You put these little beads on this like glue paper, and at Christmas we all get a new one. We all get a new one, and there's usually like a white elephant style exchange of who gets them. So yes, which funny enough, I don't have any here either. But I've been doing the little perler bead things, which is very similar that you do the iron on afterwards.
Oh yes.
Yep. So I've been doing those, and when I went to this coding conference, they gave us a kit of those as a coding exercise. The idea that you're following a pattern, a plan, and you're having to whatever. So so I get that from you as well. The glasses over this little thing, and so I'll show you those later. I've got several that I've made. I won't send you home with a 11 by 13 one of those, but
if it's applicable.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Like an elephant.
Yeah. So perler, or not perler, the gem art bead stuff. What else? What are some other things? Think nerdy franchises, movies that you've watched and enjoyed, or TV shows that you've enjoyed. It doesn't have to be like space. Nerd is just, I love it and I like to talk about it. So what are some things that or books that you've read recently you're like, man, I really like that book. That was a good one.
Yes, I mean, it's hard for me to talk about my favorite book. I recently got into audiobooks, which I was opposed to for many years because I so enjoyed reading, the actual act of reading and being alone with the story. But I spend a lot of time driving, and you had mentioned podcasts, which I've listened to, and I've got Sirius. But I began to listen to the classics on books on tape, and I'll tell you that my favorite was of all the ones I've listened to recently was Moby Dick.
Okay.
And I have to say, I get why it was a classic. I mean, to the last page, the way the guy ended the story, which pulled together, hundreds and hundreds of pages, because Moby Dick's a very long story. I mean, he has a lot about whaling and boats, which I learned a lot about and enjoyed, but I could never have read that book at all because it would have been too long and too much of a investment of time that I probably, would have abandoned it. But I've been listening to, Jane Austen. I mean, my mom was actually a literature teacher, and she told me her favorite book was Anna Karenina, which I'm now listening to. But I mean, I'm just saying, a lot of these classics that I didn't take the time to or didn't want to, be interested in, out of my genre. And now I'm reading all the classics.
Well, I'm glad you've come to the dark side on audiobooks, because it is one of my favorite mediums. I will say the one thing that I've noticed with listening to audiobooks, and especially doing research for this show, is when I go to look up how, especially in fantasy books and sci-fi books, looking at how characters spelled their names, it's always different in my head than what it is. And it's so funny because I'm listening to it. There was one we did on Six of Crows, and it's a fantasy book, and it was so funny. I was trying to look up a character and nothing was coming up, and I had to go and look at a synopsis of the book to find how they actually spelled the character's name, because it was completely different. And in fact, I have to look up which one it was, but like, he even had a title, and the title paired with his name I thought was the whole name, but it was always giving his title. And anyways, and the classics are good. I'm listening to a Brandon Sanderson book right now, which is not a classic, but you mentioned a long book. It's a 47-hour long audiobook.
Wow.
Which is really long. It's taken me all summer. I've got like 4 hours left in it, and I'm enjoying it, but it's really long. After this is done, it's like I'm going to just 2 or 3 hour books just to get through a bunch of them.
Right.
Because it's been a long book.
And I think when you're talking about the pronunciations too, I think for a lot of books that have very complex names or a lot of characters, it is hard to keep them straight.
Yes.
And in fact, it requires me sometimes writing them down, or sometimes they have a little thing at the beginning of the book about who all the characters are. But in the audiobooks, even though there's just one person reading it, for some reason I'm able better to keep it straight as I'm listening to it. I mean, we're talking about Russian names right now, which, with titles and all. But yeah, as I said, I can now appreciate the audio book idea
For readers on the go.
for readers on the go. Yes.
Very good. Very good. Okay, so today we're talking about Dune. That's the book that we're talking about. Dune series in general. We're going to focus more on the first book because that was what was covered in the recent films that have come out. And so would you do the honors of giving just kind of a brief synopsis of Dune and why you love that book?
Well, I'm not much of a science fiction person.
Except Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy as well.
Well, all right, and this one, and so, I mean, I think there was some question like, why did you give me this book? Well, because you liked science fiction, and I'm always looking for really good examples of different genres, even if it's not my favorite genre. Okay, so I had actually I had read Dune back in the early 70s. I mean, it was written in the 60s,
right,
which should blow a lot of people away because you think about how many years that was, but because you had an interest in science fiction, and because I do like to talk about books with people, I would give you these books.
Yeah.
Now here it is. How old are you?
I am 39 for the next 6 months.
Okay, so this is almost 30 years of me waiting to talk to you about this book.
Yes.
But I had read that. It had been a kind of a not classic at that point, but it was really becoming much more popular because of the themes of it in the 70s. And, so I read it and thought, wow, that's a great book. But so when you came around, I thought, hey, go ahead and read this because it's science fiction and we can maybe talk about that. And then, of course, later on when you, became pastor, there was certainly spiritual,
elements
themes.
To the story.
Elements to the story that I thought, oh, you could relate to it that way too. But I mean, the story to me, when I first read it, seemed almost kind of like the Bible, and just the way that you can see how over time this lineage goes through until finally it was a lot of the prophecies were fulfilled in Jesus. That's kind of what I thought initially when I was reading the book. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. Of course, I found out later on that he was actually Muslim, and I thought, well, there you go. See, I knew very little bit about Muslim back then, being raised as a Catholic. That was something I've maybe learned about in the last decade or so. But at the time, that's what I thought. I thought, oh, this is kind of interesting, kind of like, it's the lineage of Christ, and and how eventually it all came together, and everyone was able to tell that's who it was because he fulfilled the prophecies. And then I guess the other thing about that book that I thought was just so fascinating was the water conservation. Of course, when you think about now and how we talk about water and we're worried about the oceans, this is back in the 60s or probably even before that when the guy was coming up with this.
Right.
But just the very specific way of collecting all the fluid because we were down to very little water. And so they didn't let you breathe or your nose running or anything, and even when people died, they would take the last of the fluid. I was that really kind of, kind of stopped me and made me think a lot even back then because I thought, wow, that's pretty much.
It is,
but it made sense.
Yeah, and they had the scene when it's at the beginning of the second movie, but in the middle of the first book there, where Paul cries as he's killed this Freeman. And he says he gives water to the dead, and it was this big deal that he must have really cared about him. He's going to shed water,
which is so
this.
precious, right?
It was thoroughly enjoyed the book. Obviously, read it several times. I think probably one of the reasons why it was hard getting into it is because this is like hard sci-fi. I mean, this is deep sci-fi. This is not cotton candy sci-fi, and so there's a lot of world building, and so at a certain age. You need things coming at you much quicker, and so whereas Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, it doesn't slow down. Like it starts and it's just crazy the whole way through. This one took a little longer to kind of jump into and to enjoy. But for those that have not read the book, it follows. It's set in planets, and it's after they've like left Earth, and they're far out, and it follows three families. One of which the Atreides being the heroes of the story on this desert planet where Arrakis it's political intrigue and sabotage and all these. It's a lot there, but it follows a young man who rises to power in a foreign land and takes back what his family's owed. And so it's there's several books. I made it through halfway through the fourth one, which I think is God Emperor Dune. Did you read the fourth one?
I think I did. I don't remember it. I did end up listening to the first, second, and third books again, so they seem more familiar. But I think it ends up going off into a different group of characters.
So it is. There's several that are repeats. So first book follows Paul, follows him becoming the Lisan al-Gaib, the main guy, the one who can see the future and is going to take care of all these things. The second book follows him some more as he has children. The third one follows the children. And then the fourth one, it fast forwards hundreds of years, and one of his children has become a sandworm.
Okay.
So
I don't remember that, so there you go.
So Leto, the boy,
right,
becomes a sandworm, so he can live forever. And so, but like, he's a mixture of it. So there's him, and then Duncan Idaho, they keep regenerating him. So like, it's like the 50th incarnation of Duncan Idaho. So there are some characters, but I would just say if you're looking at all these books and you go, man, I don't know that I want to jump into this series, there's so many, read the first one, maybe the second one, if you're really into the third one, and then you can just stop. Because there's 20 some odd books.
Right.
He wrote the first 6, and then his son has written several others that kind of fill in the gaps around there.
Do any of them go as a prequel?
Yes. So I was going to say, have you gotten a chance to look at the Dune comics yet?
No.
So I right now, a current run is House Carino. So there were 3 books: House Carino, House Atreides, and House Harkonnen, which are the prequels to it that kind of show those families coming up. And the current comics are going through House Carino, and House Carino is the Emperor, and his child, and those things. Okay. And so yeah, there's some prequels there, but it wasn't Frank Herbert that wrote it. It was Brian, his son, that wrote those. But yeah, so Dune. So we talked about Dune and why you recommended it to me, because I was into sci-fi, a little nerdy boy, loving space and robots and all those things. And there's a lot of other neat stuff we can get into in the book here in a minute. Actually, no, we'll talk about that a little bit. So let's talk about the book. Your favorite parts about the book. You mentioned the water conservation. You mentioned the prophecies. Funny enough, so often the things that interest me in books are the animals, and you know how much I love animals. I love animals. I love them. They're my favorites. They're not. They aren't.
Never
been. But when I play video games, I want the animal companion. Like I just do. When I play Dungeons and Dragons, I like to have be a ranger that has an animal. I do. And so for this one, there are these Shai-Hulud, the sandworms, these giant sandworms. Think like Tremors, but much bigger. And they surf on them. They kind of govern the desert. They call them Shai-Hulud. It's their god. It's their deity, and they worship this giant sandworm because if you've seen the movies, it's huge. It's a big sandworm. It's what generates the spice, which gives them the ability to see the future. It gives them all kinds of other abilities. It's what runs the universe. What runs the galaxy is the spice trade, and so they generate it, but also they use it for transport. They surf on it, and that was what I really enjoyed.
I was going to say that was one of my, if I talked about my top 3 things, riding the worm was definitely a big part in my imagination of how that would be. And, kind of to leap around because I do have a little ADD. The original movie, there was a movie before the ones that we're familiar with, and that they do not, show a good depiction. There's, the technology back then.
Right. Wasn't it a green screen and they just blew sand up at, who's the guy that played, I can see his face. He was the bad guy on Wayne's World, I think. Anyways, doesn't matter. But yes, he played Paul Atreides, and he was just kind of like, whoa.
Yeah, because I had an image in my mind from reading, because you develop that, and I was very disappointed in the original movie. In fact, and I was also disappointed because I didn't think it was easy to follow. So I figured, the fact that I was having trouble following it, and I read the book,
right?
How was anyone else going to really understand what's going on? But in the movie, they did such a great job. It was almost perfect.
Yes. It was exciting. There's a made-for-TV series that came out on Sci-Fi that also had those worms, but they were more slow-moving. They were still the fastest way to travel the desert, and they still would use their gaffy hooks to open up those scales to bring them up to the top. I'll have to see if I can find it so you can watch it. It's okay. It's better than the 1984 movie,
right?
But the current Dune movies, they definitely have done it right. They've done it right.
The technology has really allowed for some person's conceptualization to be brought into life. But, as I said, each of our minds may picture it a little different way, so it may not be exactly how I saw it, or even the characters. But a lot of times you can be satisfied with the depiction by saying, okay, that works. I can see that.
It's a little rabbit trail. We were talking about audiobooks earlier. Do you remember the Drizzt Do'Urden books I used to read a lot as a kid? I had like a whole series of them.
Give me the name of books.
It was Homeland and Exile. Yeah, so I read the first 18, 19 of those books conventionally with pages, and then I started listening to it, and it was so funny. In my head, I couldn't listen to them anymore because they were mispronouncing these characters that I had read for 20 years. They were mispronouncing the names, and the voices didn't sound the same, and it drove me crazy that I had spent all those years. But you mentioned, not being able to nail it exactly as it is in your mind. But yeah, so something neat. I don't know if you knew this or not. The scenes with the Harkonnens, the bad guys, that were in black and white. Do you know how they filmed those? Mm-mm. They filmed those using infrared, not black and white, which gives this really kind of weird, grainy effects. Or infrared. I think it was infrared.
Yeah, and, like night vision.
Yeah, and so that's what makes them look so just dark and weird and everything else. So that was they were just going to do it in black and white, and he's like, well, let's try it this way, and it works. It works. Really. Those are the scenes that are the reason why I can't show them to Zeke. Like, I think Zeke would really love those movies, but the Harkonnens in particular and those scenes, I think
he's not ready for.
He's not ready for those yet. Although he did ride Tower of Terror and he enjoyed it. He did. And
he's a little pluckier for sure.
He's getting there. He's going to be in the middle school next year, so we'll see. We'll see how that goes. So we had kind of talked this a little bit beforehand, but was there anything you would have wanted to do differently in the movie? So we talked about the books, loving the books, not being able to really make it exactly how you have in your mind, but the movie, did anything hit weird or you would have wanted to do differently, or was it just like, man, this is fantastic compared to what we've had up until now?
Well, I felt it was great compared to what we had now. I like the fact of just bringing that story to this generation, and you can't put it all in a movie because it would be unless you did some kind of long mini-series or something, because it was a very long, involved, detailed book.
Right.
But no, I felt pretty satisfied. I as I said, I had just re-listened to the books, and was pleased with, what somebody else did, what other and who did produce all that?
Denis Villeneuve.
Okay. I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's not it. That's the guy on LTN. What is the guy's name?
But anyway, one of these great producers that ends up taking this project on.
Yeah. Denis Villeneuve. That was it. I was right.
Okay.
So I would say one of the things that for me, and I get why they did it, but the Chani's character was very different. And Chani's character and Stilgar's, I felt, were very different than how I remembered them in the book. And I get some of it. So Chani is Zendaya's character. And she was kind of a little more skeptical than I felt like she was in the book. And especially towards the end of the second movie, where in the book, she understands everything he's doing, and she has full trust, full in everything he's doing. And at the end of the second movie, it was not there. That she was, she felt like he was being selfish and those other kind of things. And maybe that's setting up something that's going to come in the third movie. But I get it. Her character was much quieter in the books, and we want a strong female lead. We want it. This is written 60 years ago, and not to.
I think initially he was just a dumb kid too, though.
It's true.
Who got lost in the desert. I mean, they were going to kill him when they first found him. So, her uncle put him under her wing, and she was considered to be the teacher in the new life that he was living. But I think that for any of it, as I said, some of it just couldn't be developed just because of the length of time. But
of course,
yeah, she was a pretty girl. And
no, I get that. That was another thing too. Is like I don't know who I would have put in place, but I always like lesser known actors. In especially in really nerdy movies, just because you have this picture in your head, and so if it's a better known actor, I'm glad it wasn't. But if it was Robert Downey Jr., all I would see is Iron Man, And so a little bit of challenge here. But it also Stilgar. I mentioned Stilgar. I felt like he was, because he was so bought into the prophecies in the movies, he seemed less strong than I remember him being in the book.
Right.
It seemed like he was more reliant on Paul than being
the leader,
the site's leader. Right. So, but again,
I think it's because they took a big chunk of that out, and they just caught him up in a hurry.
We've got to make it work.
That's right. Yes, we're behind you, and we got to hurry up. We got only 2.5 more hours to get this story told.
So they're talking about making a third movie. Where do you think they're going to end this third movie? Because they did the first book in 2 movies, and now we have, plenty more story. So where do you think they're going to end? Because we see Paul up until the end of the second book, possibly into the third book. Where are they going to end this? And he says he's doing 1. Where would you want to see it end? Like, what do you want to see that you remember from the books? Anything you can think of? You're like,
no. It wasn't on the list.
It wasn't on the list. Sorry, I did not.
I like to think about this.
I know.
I don't know. It's a very good question. Where would you like to see it end?
Well, so the second book, there's a lot of the kind of like Sarah and Hagar, Ishmael and Isaac kind of tension between Chani and right. So there's that happens, that goes through in the second book. And the second book, spoiler alert, the book came out 60 years ago, so you should have read it by now. End of the second book, his children are born, but Chani dies. Right? That's the end of that second book. And then he wanders out in the desert because he's blinded, and he wanders out into the desert, so he's not a tax on them. So that's the end of the second book, But to squeeze that entire book into a single movie would be challenging. So I don't know where in the middle of that, unless they want to change that story. But again, it's a sad ending of the second book. The ending of the first book, even though he chooses to marry the Emperor's daughter instead of Chani, even though that's a sad point, it is still a hopeful ending.
Right.
There's not another hopeful ending for several books. So I don't know. I really feel like they should just stop. Just stop. Just be done. Be done. It'd be over. That would be. I don't want a third movie.
Unless they did some kind of long miniseries.
Yes, I could do an 8-part miniseries on HBO Max covering the entire second book.
Right.
But even still, it's gonna be a sad ending. But it's a sad book. I remember I was watching. It was on Waco. It was on the Branch Davidians in Waco, and it was a dramatized series. So whatever. And I know how it ends. I know how that ends, but I remember laying in my bed watching this episode, just like, please just fake it. Like, I know how it's supposed to end. Just make them all be okay. Make them all be okay, because it ends with them storming that property and all these characters that you've watched for whatever 3 or 4 hours dying. And I'm like, just lie to me and tell me they all got out. Like, I know it didn't. I know they're all dead. Like, I get that, but just fake it for me right now.
The Titanic was the same way with me.
Yes.
It's like we knew from the very beginning that they're all going down, but then it was like, what? And that little couple holding hands as the ship. I always use that example, that little scene talking about my little patient.
Yes.
There they were. They've been together their whole life, and boat's going down. They're just gonna hold hands and wait for it.
Just wait for it. All right, so I have this question. Are there any areas of the world story that you would want to know more about or develop a sequel spin-off to cover? So we've done these 3. You mentioned a prequel. So is that something that's kind of...
Absolutely. I'm thinking, because even in the story of his mother, I mean, there is a whole lot that led to, like, why in this particular... time period, she was not married to his father on purpose, because she wouldn't have been a good marriage.
Right.
But he loved her, and he never ended up
getting married to anyone else.
Because of his love for her. He didn't want her to ever feel like she was, not important or,
Yeah.
So I would like to have seen that love story. That would have been maybe a little more, because we're seeing like the last 2 weeks of their relationship together without a whole lot of understanding of, really how important she was. And even her decision to have him went against her whole upbringing.
Right.
Why would she be willing to go against that?
It
must be that because of that relationship.
Well, the comics, so it's House Carino, so it's really focusing on the Emperor, but they only start about 9 months before the episode of Dune 1. So it has her being pregnant one of the first couple issues. So you won't be able to get that, but you may pick up House Atreides. That'll probably go over some of those, but those prequels. For me, there's a lot of just brief mentioning of different technology and peoples, like the Tleilaxu and things like that. It's like, what the heck are these things? Like, whatever. Also in the comics, they go over some of those. They have pictures of mentats, like what the mentats are, and making the mentats, and why they need the vibro shield things, whatever. A lot of those technology things I would love to know more about. I want to see more. I want to see a whole lot more ornithopters. I just want to see a lot of those things. But yes, as far as prequels go, you do have House Harkonnen, House Carino, and House Atreides. So I have to look and see into those.
I was going to say, too, one of the things they kind of allude to is the outlawing of the technology. And it was because of their fear of AI and machines taking over. That was kind of touched on the first book. And yet, once again, if you look at 60 years later...
Yeah,
he was worried about it back then, and now we're just going, oh, did we ever think about, But 60 years have marched by, and this concern,
yeah,
it wasn't really thought of or mentioned or talked about until just recently again.
Have you seen the 3-Body Problem on Netflix? That one will shake you up a little bit. It's aliens, so but the 3-Body Problem, it has to do with a planet and the sun. You can plan for things, like you know how it works, whatever else. But if you introduce a second sun, 3 bodies, that it messes the equation up. And so it's very much technology. How fast do we move? Those kind of things. It's a lot. I think I'm talking about it on our episode of What's Wrong with These Kids. I think that's one of the ones that I brought up to, because it was one of those ones that I watched the first episode, and then I'm glad I'm on teacher schedule and can watch the next 8 and not go to bed yet. I'll just stay up until 6 in the morning watching this, because I got nowhere to be tomorrow. Cool. What are the characters that stood out to you that you really enjoyed?
The mom.
Yeah.
And just her mind power.
Were you taking man, that would have been nice. That would have been
of course,
something.
I originally read it before I had children.
Right.
But yes, as I said, I did like that kind of, power that she had. And if you think about it, it wasn't just making someone do something, but even in controlling her own body. Those are the things that she was teaching her son. And so I thought that was pretty interesting. I actually like that little princess that he ended up marrying, because she can't really help herself.
Irulan.
Yep. She can't help the position she's in, so she's kind of a victim in the whole thing, even though she seems like she's really powerful. She really kind of drew the short stick.
Yes. Although she wasn't really much of a victim in the second book. She was poisoning Chani. So, she's...
Right.
Like I said, Hagar and Sarah, that was...
And once again, biblical versus
Yes.
Muslim, which is, as I said, when I was doing my research and they were saying that, I go, oh. There are similarities in both
Right.
those stories, so
Right.
I can see, but I wasn't thinking of that
Yes.
from my own perspective.
Yes, both, Christian holy text and Muslim holy text are set in the Middle East and those cultures and customs, and that's kind of the backdrop of what Arrakis looks like. So, yeah, I can see that. Which is an excellent way for us to segue into kind of the big thinker question, is they have these prophecies that they talk about. The Bene Gesserit, the witches have these prophecies, and I think it was Carrie. She goes, did they fulfill the prophecies on their own, and so, or were the prophecies being fulfilled? That kind of weird circle, like, did they orchestrate these things in such a way, holding their hands on the wheel, or did this actually happen? And so...
That's a very interesting question, because I thought that the mother had maybe...
Cooked the books?
Cooked the books. But I didn't think of it as being the Bene Gesserit, really being the manipulators.
I mean, they were orchestrating the gene pool and making
Right,
sure we've got
right.
these things exactly where they need to be, and which people will say that of Christianity, that of course, it's so convenient that in your book you have all these things, and of course in your book it has. But when we look at it as Christians, we go, okay, well, yes, we did write about the prophecies, and then the prophecies came to happen in the same book. It would be, I don't know, more amazing that if someone else had but even still, to have all these things happen, you can't orchestrate all that. You just can't orchestrate. You can't orchestrate all of it. I forgot what the exact number is, but it's talking about if 8 of Christ's prophecies were fulfilled, it was in the one out of millions and millions and millions that it would actually happen 8, and there was 44 prophecies, 48 prophecies. And so here with Paul, there are certain things that were orchestrated by Jessica, that she chose to have a boy. It's going to be a boy. Well, she kind of made that decision, but that he would be on Arrakis, that he would know the ways of the people. And in the book, he watches the mouse and knows what the mouse is doing, and he's the one that walks on the desert like the mouse does. He's not instructed how to do that. He just sees it and does it. They did allude to some of it, like, how he tucks his pants into his boots and things like that. But so, like, they could have orchestrated all those things. But then the question is, too, where did the prophecies of the Muad'Dib come from? Or Lisan al-Gaib, where did they come from? If they came from the Bene Gesserit, it's like, how twisted is that they go to each planet and go, oh, there it is. Oh, here's this. And then, oh, look, what we've been trying to do the whole time actually happens. But I thought that was... Carrie. I think Carrie said it in the theater. She goes, did they actually fulfill the prophecies, or did they just go ahead and push it through? It's like, I don't know.
It's a good question, though. It definitely made me think about it differently.
Yes. And, again, I don't know the... faith of
James Herbert?
Not James. It is Herbert. Is it James Herbert? Frank Herbert. One of those typical white guy names, whatever. Frank Herbert. I don't know, his faith background, but it would be interesting to hear that, factor that in. Well, let's change gears. Let's talk about our would you rathers. So we're going to put ourselves in the action of the book. We're going to look at some things, and so I'm going to let you answer them first, and then I'll tell you why you're wrong. So that's how we'll do that. I'm kidding.
All right.
I'm kidding. So the first one says, would you rather ride a sandworm or fly an ornithopter?
Sandworm.
Sandworm. I mean, I would really like to ride a sandworm. That would be fun. I would also like to fly, though. I don't know which one I would want to do more of, but I think I probably would feel like I was flying if I was just standing on the back of the sandworm, especially moving as fast.
Right. So, yeah, and it's funny, the ornithopter. I just thought it was a helicopter. So that it didn't really. I mean, I'm saying it buzzed by like who cares? So when you said that, yeah. So anyway.
Yes.
And not that I could fly a helicopter. I've only done that one, but still.
I want to fly I want to fly like Superman. That's what I want to fly like. So I think it would feel more like it if I was right on the back of a sandworm. Yeah, that would be fun.
Definitely.
That would be fun.
That'd be cool.
What do you think they smell like?
I Well, I don't know what they smelled like, but I'm sure they didn't smell great. That's why they had all those things stuffed up and,
It was just for the worms. Just
for the worms.
Don't want to smell the worms. Don't want to smell the worms. All right, so would you rather have the Bene Gesserit voice or the ability to see the future?
Well, I would never want to see the future.
No?
No.
Not at all?
No.
Okay.
No. That hurts right now, just even have you say that.
Okay, all right.
But definitely the voice, obviously. And if I'd only had it as a mom, like you said.
You kind of had it a little bit. there were moments where we knew, like, let's not push this. This is dangerous.
Yeah,
There's a different tone there. I think I have the voice sometimes. I do. There are times, both in the classroom and at home, where something changes, and I'm definitely exacting some control.
I liked all that Bene Gesserit stuff, though. I thought, man, sign me up for that class.
Yeah.
Because I just really liked just the natural way of, being in tune with your body and the sounds around and all that.
Right.
To me, just seemed like could be useful in my life. Not even if I was living on the, another planet. So yeah, I definitely like that.
I don't want to see the future either. Let's be honest.
No, I don't need that. Let's live the day.
The picture that is painted, I'm good. I'm right here. It's called the present for a reason, so you can enjoy it. Yes, definitely the voice. Definitely the voice.
It's probably my phone going off. But we'll just
ignore it. Gotcha. That works. I thought, how loud is the TV on downstairs? My goodness.
I think it's my phone.
That's right. Would you rather live in a peaceful desert or a bustling cities?
Peaceful desert.
Okay. I did not think you were going to pick that. Like, for me, I kind of live in a peaceful desert out here in Lake Butler.
And what about me in High Springs?
This is true.
Yeah, I got to go into the big city.
This is true. I can see that. Yes. Yeah, I definitely like it out here. There are a few things that I miss from living. I mean, we didn't live in a big city in Alachua or Gainesville, but being able to walk to get a burrito was nice.
Absolutely.
that was nice. But golly, I like it out here. I really do.
You're not, and I'm not that far from a good burrito.
This is true. This is true. And it's one of those things that you can make pretty good at home.
True.
Even the things that are not as easy. I don't know if you don't. I don't know why I said this, but on my Christmas list, I have a sushi bazooka that you mix it all up and then it pushes it through and you got sushi. So
sounds like something I might want to get you for Christmas.
I pointed out to Carol as well. I go, it's a Carol client. It's like $8 or $9 item. I go, perfect for a stocking, and she goes, perfect for a stocking. So peaceful desert, yes, and that's closer to a beach than a bustling city, and I do like being at the beach. Beach. All right, last question: House Atreides, the scrappy underdog, or House Carino, authority and security?
I'm always for the scrappy underdog.
Yes, please. Let's go. Pull up by my bootstraps.
That's right.
By the sweat of my brow, let's go.
We're done when we're done.
That's right. I just went to a teachers conference and got to spend time with a lot of my colleagues, and it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun hanging out with them, and none of the ones that I was with, but I know teachers that would much rather have that authority and security. Like, I'm just gonna do my thing, and you can. But a lot of us are innovators going, no, we want to cut a new path. Let's make things better. Like, things could be better. Like, let's keep making it better. And that's definitely that.
And that's the question. I'm a nurse practitioner, so whenever I go into a patient's room, my thought is, how can I make this better?
Yes. There's a phrase that's been going around on some of my colleagues' stuff that I think you will enjoy. It's 1% better, and it's every time I want to be 1% better, and so. We can tire ourselves out trying to make it amazing.
I mean, I am an overachiever. I have to admit that.
We can.
Yes.
But
any project takes on a life of its own. That is definitely our family.
Yes. But 1% better. What's one thing I can tweak to make this a little better now, and the next time we'll make it 1% better?
Right, because I hate to do all my good ideas the first visit anyway, because they're never ever going to get better. So I might as well have another trick up my sleeve. So there you go. Same with the teacher. Can't do all the changes.
1% better. 1% better.
Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice.
As I said, the only other thing I was going to add to that was that what I had read, a big thing the story explores the moral question of can one person change the course of history, or is fate inescapable? And a warning against the idea of messiahs, strong leaders, and so-called great men. I thought that was kind of interesting because you don't see it as a warning. Once again, it was written back in the 60s, but that was kind of the theme problem with this young man, was that he decided he was going to be the savior, and a whole lot of stuff happened, by making that decision, and whether or not all of it should have rested on this one person, it's certainly a question to be explored at a later time.
Yes. And I don't remember where it was from, but if you're a hero long enough, you'll become the villain, or you find yourself the villain or whatever. And he gets there.
Exactly.
Yep. Well, I appreciate you coming on, Terrie. I appreciate you coming on. And so, last little thing. So, I've got Charlie first period, and we were discussing what is she going to call me, because I don't want her calling me Dad in class.
Right. I never call my mom.
Because then I'm going to be Dad to everyone in that class. Like, that's just how that's going to go. But she doesn't want to call me Mr. Burroughs, because she says, I know that you're going to respond with, yes, Miss Burroughs, every time. And then everyone's going to be calling me Miss Burroughs.
He's got a good point.
She's got a great
point.
Can
you control yourself?
She's got a great point. No. And I don't want to embarrass my kid. Like, that was so funny when I first started teaching. Like, she was so worried that I was going to, show up in a bikini and dance on the table and embarrass her. And I don't want to embarrass her. We'll see. There may be a day. But so I tell you, we landed on Mr. Dad.
Mr. Dad.
Mr. Dad. I said, now, first period is definitely going to all call me Mr. Dad. I'm fairly certain that's how that's going to work out. But that class, they'll all call me Mr. Dad. I would like Mr. Dad a lot more than just Dad. That feels really weird.
And my mom taught school when I was growing up. And so she was my teacher, and she taught in the same school as my brother and I. And I always would call her Mrs. Freeland because I was okay with wanting to make that distinction.
Right.
But she tells a story about Kevin when he was little, and it was picture day, and he had somehow gotten his tie caught in the zipper of his little jacket that he had. And of course he comes into her classroom, and he's trying to be really brave and everything. Miss Freeland, Bobby, and he starts crying, So, yeah, you never know. He may be Dad sometime when she needs you. And
I'm okay with that.
Can I play you a game? And you...
Not right now, buddy. In a little bit, okay? I'm coming down in a minute. Love that boy. No awareness, none. We were at church yesterday, and all the time I had to be like, don't run into them, don't knock that over. That's okay. He's just in his own little world. He's being six. But thank you for coming on. I enjoyed it. We'll do Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy next.
Ooh, that's have to read it again.
Yeah, there you go. And sadly, they don't have a collected edition of all of them, so you got to buy each individual one in audiobook. So
yeah, it's been a long time since I read that.
You seen the movie of that one?
I don't think so.
That's a good one. I'll have to get that one for you. That was a good one too. That's a good one.
All right.
Mom.
All right.
Thank you for spending some time with us. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode, which will be talking about Green Lantern with Matt Coker of Love Thy Nerd. And it's a fantastic conversation. I've been looking forward to having it here, and so I hope you'll enjoy it as well. That'll be coming out in a couple weeks. If you're watching on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and leave a comment. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, give us 5 stars and leave a review. We'll read it on the show. It'd be very excellent to have that review there. And if you head over to nextgennerd.com, you can also share any episode from there to your social media. Links to so much more are in the show notes and are available in your podcast app at the bottom of the YouTube video or at nextgennerd.com. And if you want even more Next Gen Nerd, you can find me on Instagram at nextgen_nerd or on X at nextgen_nerd. Well, that's it for this episode. Until next time.
Peace out, Seacrest.